The chapter focusing on Don Fabrizio's ambitions and his reasons for not getting involved in the modern regime is followed by a chapter focusing on the other representative of the old order, Father Perrone, the family's priest and confessor. Here we have a priest of humble beginnings, whose family scrimped and saved to buy an almond orchard, paired with Don Fabrizio's family. He's a scion of an old family and the owner of seemingly countless estates and buildings. Perrone and Fabrizio had talked together about whose situation was most dire, the church's or the aristocracy's. Fabrizio thought the church would turn against the aristocracy in order to save itself from the wrath of the mob. Father Perrone thought that the aristocracy would sell out the church, as it did in France, and the church would be expropriated. The church and the aristocrats, especially insofar as the aristocrats embraced the faith, were allied. They had slightly different dispositions, it seems, and these dispositions form the topic of this chapter, chapter 5, called Father Perrone Pays a Visit. He pays a visit home, to be exact. His father had earlier passed away, but Father Perrone pays a visit to celebrate Mass in his honor on his feast day. Old friends greet the father, all impoverished but faithful members of the old order. An herbalist, a parish priest, local owners, they are all interested in knowing what he knows about the new Italy. Will the nobles consent to the new order? What does this new order have in store? On the question of what the new order has in store, Father Perrone is adamant. There is, quote, an atheist and rapacious Italian state now in formation, end quote. There will be laws of expropriation and conscription, quote, which will spread from Piedmont all the way down here like cholera, end quote. The herbalist is especially dismayed. It seems he has been required to buy a license to gather up herbs and sell them. This he cannot believe. He wants to know if the nobles, the people who had always been there to protect the downtrodden and faithful, will be of use in getting rid of such laws. What does the Prince of Salina say? The herbalist asks. Father Perrino's answer, a complex one to be sure, puts the herbalist to sleep. But it contains his deepest reflection on the relation between the church and the aristocracy, and hence his deepest reflection on the old order. It puts the herbalist to sleep, as I say, and Father Perrone knows that it will. He still feels the need to express it so that he understands it. The thoughts have been bubbling around in his head, and saying them will make him understand his own thoughts better. It is a strange mechanism that Lampedusa uses, but it allows for a pretty uninterrupted treatment of the topic. Father Perrone supplies it. Father Perrone begins noting that the aristocrats have a strong collective memory, and they live in a world all their own. They depend on others for the goods of their life and the leisure they enjoy. They find others useful, including priests, who reassure them about eternal life. Aristocrats are like the church in taking a long view, in having collective memory, but their memory is attached to family and land. The homes are grand, just like the churches, but those homes are adorned not with works of art that illustrate acts of piety, but often with pagan architecture, painting the attractiveness of genuinely human experiences, such as love, death, noble sacrifice, and such. Aristocrats seem indifferent to worldly goods because they expect those goods will always be there. They take those goods for granted. They are indifferent through the inevitable surfeit that they enjoy. Again, aristocrats are like the church in having a contempt for worldly goods, but the aristocracy has contempt for reasons that are not particularly spiritual. They don't work for the goods, and they cannot lose those goods, so those goods do not have a hold on them. This independence from their goods makes them generous, encourages them to help others. They even do not acknowledge the petty thefts to which they are subject. It is almost as if those aristocrats lack the instinct for self-preservation. Some things are important to aristocrats, though they are matters of indifference to others. Don Fabrizio has gotten testy over a badly ironed shirt, but no peasant would worry about that, even if his belly were full. They are different. They have different values, as we say today. They value different things, that is. If the class of aristocrats were wiped out, and Father Perrone is clear that these aristocrats do know how to die, new ones will arise in their place. The desire to be honored, it seems, to be great, does not disappear. If, quote, this class were to vanish, an equivalent one would be formed straight away, with the same qualities and the same defects. It might not be based on blood anymore, but possibly on, say, length of time lived in a place, or a greater knowledge of some text considered sacred, or perhaps, as we might say today, on going to the right universities. Don Fabrizio had insisted that there was no revolution, that things would go on as before. The herbalist awakens and says that Don Fabrizio must be a fool for thinking so. The priest agrees with the herbalist, it seems, though it is somewhat ambiguous. Other complications cloud the father's visit home. Just as Don Fabrizio had found it necessary to arrange the marriage between Tancredi and Angelica, so the Father Perrone is called to solve a family crisis through marriage. It is a crisis long in the making. It seems that Father Perrone's father received sole proprietorship of an almond grove, though his brother had worked just as hard to procure it. The two sides of the family, in good Sicilian fashion, were estranged from one another as a result. Each side held a grudge. The son of the wronged brother, Father Perrone's uncle, seduced Father Perrone's niece, impregnated her, and then left her. The only solution is marriage between the cousins. This child could reunite the families. To induce the marriage, Father Perrone promises half the almond grove as a dowry to his uncle. He employs more than a little shenanigans to get this deal done. He acts as if the marriage were settled matter to his uncle. The good father defies his mother, who tells him not to forfeit any of the almond grove. The marriage is arranged by consent, but it is not exactly informed consent. It is misinformed consent, in fact. But the solution is a good one, and Father Perrone, from that point on, leaves the book. What are we to make of Father Perrone? He is an ally of Don Fabrizio, especially an ally against the democratizing tendencies of the day. Don Fabrizio relents to those forces, though they are not in the fiber of his being. Father Perrone would seem to be a relentless opponent of them, which means that the Church, intolerant perhaps and authoritative certainly, stands more in the way of modernity than the aristocracy. Certainly, the aristocracy and the Church had been allies. Don Fabrizio and Father Perrone were friends. Both see the importance of marriage and seek to get marriage accomplished. Yet they point in slightly divergent directions, and Don Fabrizio will be replaced by other aristocrats of the spirit later. But nothing will be there to replace the Church if she were to vanish. But the Church has the promise of being the eternal Church, of living beyond time. So she too will not decisively vanish. More on such vanishing in the next video.